Good day, you beautiful, beautiful people. This is Aaron the Pedantic, not looking so beautiful currently, a bit haggard and disheveled, and I apologize. You should look more professional and everything. Honestly, I need a haircut, but at the same time, my wife hates when I get my hair cut, and I'm kind of whipped. Maybe it'll happen soon. Anyway, what is today? Today is Magic User Day, or at least I'm recording a video on Magic Users and maybe a video on something else too. I'm kind of trying to do it in batches because I'm really busy throughout the week. Anyway, Magic Users. So I have been doing this article series on my blog. I'm a level 1 blank. What does that mean? And the crux of it is that I take the things that you can infer from the first edition AD&D books, the PHB, the DMG, and the MM. I take that and then I try to extrapolate as much information as I can. If we were to take it as if it were some grand scheme that was, perfectly constructed, and we're just gonna try and figure out everything that we can that was intended, and assume that it all fits into place perfectly in this beautiful, beautiful web of greatness. That's the kind of thing that I'm playing with. I have been playing with. And I have to say, so far, there's been a lot of really cool stuff that I've been able to shake from that. And so this is an article that I did specifically on the Magic User. And, I'm going to put a link in the description so you can actually read the article itself. I'm not going to just read the article to you. This is just kind of commentary on, some of the things that I found interesting as I was diving into this. So, for those who don't know, I'm, not like the most well educated when it comes to AD&D. It's been quite a discovery type thing. So some of these things came as a surprise to me. So first off, I like to ask, who can be a magic user? Because there are going to be a lot of things that are going to fall in place based off of that information. And really, humans, by far, are going to be the magic users that you would have paid the most attention to, just by virtue of the fact that we have racial restrictions and level restrictions based on those races. Now, a lot of people throw those out, and you do you, boo. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not a purist. I'm not going to say, oh, you're degeneracy, you're doing it wrong. Even though I am going to think it in my heart of hearts, in my brain of brains. Not really. I don't really care what you do. I think that there is something really interesting whenever you actually do consider these racial restrictions, and it's going to say some interesting things about the world. So, in the case of these magic users, if you are a human, you are the only person who is ever going to get above 11th level in the class. That is huge because, as y'all understand, 11th level is going to be what, 5th level spells? I think that's when 6th level spells come online. So everybody else, every other race in the whole world of AD&D First Edition is not capable of casting certain spells. That is interesting to me. And just by that nature, either you're going to stop playing once you get up to higher levels as a demi-human, or you're going to multi-class. And to me, I find that very interesting, because if you're encouraging multi-classing with them, then you kind of start getting these things that lean into some of the BX style race as class concepts, even though you can really pull these in a lot of different directions in AD&D. And BX, halfling is a halfling, and elf is an elf. An elf in AD&D is often going to be very similar to an elf in the BX thing. It's just that they're probably going to have some thief skills that they wouldn't have otherwise. It could go that way. So to be more specific, for those who aren't familiar, with multi-classing in first edition, it's only for people that are demi-humans. It's not for humans. Humans can only dual class, and that's really an entirely different concept. The multi-classing, you take all of these classes, you split your experience among those classes. In order to get your next hit die, you have to level up in all 2 or 3 of those classes. And that's pretty much how it works. So you're going to take longer to level up. But at the same time, you get kind of the best of both or all three worlds in some ways whenever you are doing this. So your fighter, magic user, thief is going to have thief skills that they're really not going to be able to do if they're wearing heavy armor, but they can wear heavy armor if they want to, and they're going to have more proficiencies with weapons. They're going to have, 4 starting, and then they can get them more frequently, and they're going to get more attacks, and they get better THAC0 improvements. But they also have the option of being a magic user. Now, are they ever going to be like a human magic user? No. The human magic user is going to level up faster than them because they are going to be single classed, and they are eventually going to get to the point where they can cast these incredibly powerful spells. And to me, that really changes the way that people in the world are going to look at these magic users if they understand that that's just how it works, that elves just can't pull it off. Half elves, even worse for some reason. That one is one that it kind of mystifies me in some ways. To be specific, the half elf, human unlimited magic user level, unlimited. You can just go, 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 go. Elves can get to 11th. Half elf can only get to 8th. And that to me is kind of like, well, that's kind of weird, because if I wanted to say, well, the reason humans can get to those kinds of heights is because there's something about being human that makes you better at magic in some way. We would often put this onto humans' ambition, their ambition to go off and do things and excel and, just do all kinds of crazy stuff to change the world. Whereas elves might be more resigned to, live in their elfy places and do elfy things. Not really, so prone to go off and, change everything around them. But if that was the case, then theoretically the half elf would be the one that gets to 11 and the elf would be the one that gets to 8. That's not the case. If I could say why I think that's the case, I think that's pretty much because the half elf is the one that gets to add some cleric to the mix, and I think that's pretty much it. As far as I can recall, they're the only ones that get to add cleric and magic user together, which is very interesting. If you look at the monster manual, it has some stuff about tribal casters, and that's kind of what the is it the witch doctors or the shaman? Somebody's able to say it. But anyway, I think that's a very interesting thing, because to me, what this will say is that your Chelsea's sneezing in the background. Your adventurers are probably going to be in a very humanocentric setting. That's what everything else that I've looked at so far is all pointing towards humanocentric, very, very, very human focused, and that your demi-humans are kind of oddballs. They're uncommon. If you have a dwarf, they're going to be an exile of some kind. If you have an elf, they're probably an exile of some kind, or maybe they're some kind of diplomat, or for some reason they just hated their society. They're the odd ones out. People tend to kind of stick to their own for the most part, at least the way that I interpret it. And so whenever you combine with that, with the fact that it's impossible for these player characters and NPCs, because we also have a section that says how high NPCs can go in the absence of player characters being able to be certain classes, then what are we gonna pull from that? To me, that is gonna say that a person who is training a demi-human magic user is really not going to look at them the way that they look at a human, because only humans are the ones that become these powerful people that can change the face of the planet. It's not really the case with your half elves and your elves. And so they're not going to take them as seriously. In my personal opinion, they're not going to take them as seriously. There may be such things as specific orders of some kind or something like that, some kind of support system for these kinds of characters. If you have a fighter, magic user, thief, that's what elves tend to be, then maybe there's some kind of discipline out there that they're accustomed to, that is why this kind of fighting method and all, abilities and all that tend to be the things that they do. And maybe those are going to be out in the world, maybe hard to find, but maybe out there. And maybe those will have particularly more reason to train these kinds of people. Whereas whenever you're looking at just everyday magic users, especially like the very powerful human ones, they might look at somebody who is an elf or a half elf and say, I don't know why I'm going to waste my time, training you on stuff. You're never going to be, up to the point where you could be. And the reason that that's important is because this is classic D&D. There is a cosmological war going on, and you kind of have to be a part of it by nature of living in this kind of environment. Evil is fighting good. Law is fighting chaos. It is there. And so unless you are just not, participating in that kind of struggle, which I don't see why you wouldn't, then, we're going to, we're going to find it more important to spend our time on people that can become incredibly powerful, is what I'm trying to say. And I want to say that this was probably something that was intended. There are a lot of things. Okay, I could be, it could be giving more credit than credit is due, but I do think that that is a possibility. So, whenever I have these multi-class characters, or not even multi-class, even if it's a single class, we do have an elf in one of my first edition games. There might be more of an expectation of, you're going to owe me for every bit of training that I give you, because I don't know that you're really going to amount to too much. It sounds terrible. It does, but it's just true. Look at the spell list. And then look at the fact that the half elf is never going to get 5th level spells. And then tell me that people are going to be looking at half elves and be like, wow, this is the future of our world. Not really. Not with the kinds of stuff that you see throughout the book, in the monster manual, how it populates the world. There are high level characters all over the place in the world that is presented here. So again, you can choose to ignore all that, but it is a little bit different than the game that we're talking about, at least the way that I'm interpreting it right now. So I find that interesting. Just starting off, I find that very interesting. Those racial restrictions, I think that it adds a little bit of something. So I put here that we're prohibiting half elves from getting access to teleport. So if you're a half elf and you want to get around quickly, you need a different magic user. You can't pull it off. Half elves and elves cannot get the ability to enchant an item. Oof. Okay. I mean, a lot of people don't realize this, but enchanting an item is a spell. It is a spell for magic users, and it is up there in the levels. You got to be a pretty high level magic user, basically name level. At that point, you will be able to cast the enchant an item spell. Clerics don't have to worry about this. They have their own method. But when it comes to magic users, yes, if you want to make magic items, then you need a human. Now, what does that mean? How does that work? Well, to me, that says that divine creations are fine, because again, clerics can make magic items. Illusionists can make magic items. And that's another thing. I'll study the illusionists more later, but I really haven't messed with them too much. I probably should, because I do have an illusionist in one of my games. And magic users make magic items. Other than that, I'm sure, monstrous, big powerful monsters and deities, and they can make that kind of stuff happen. But as far as your avenues as player characters, even non-player characters, it's pretty limited at that point. So whenever you encounter a magic item that is clearly elvish in craft, then perhaps, it's elvish in craft, but whenever they wanted to actually get the stuff put on it, it was either some kind of weird elf thing that they do that's not through the normal channels that you're going to deal with, or it's through contracting with humans, paying humans inordinate sums of money to please make us this really cool thing. Again, I know I could be diving way too deep into this, but yeah, that says some really interesting things to me, and it makes humans very important. It makes them very, very, very important. It could make it so that people might not really want to play a magic user if they're not a human. I realize that could be the case, especially if they decide that they're going to be playing at the higher levels. But there are so many people out there that say, I'll play to 8th level, and then we're done. That's our campaign. That's the extent of it. So maybe this never really hits the ground for a lot of people. It never, becomes an issue. So Geas, a reincarnation, wish, clone, gate. Those are things that are kind of out of their reach. Interestingly, it is out of their reach. When we're talking about clerics will be another thing. But it's interesting because if you combine this with the fact that your half elves and clerics, half elf and elf clerics, even so, when I say elf, even the NPC ones aren't going to get to a point where they can raise the dead, except for animating dead. That's it. Half elf druid can reincarnate. That's about it. So humans have a major monopoly on the concept of bringing people back to life. That is interesting. That's transformative. Wow, wow. Yeah. So to me, that makes the human magic user, just straight up magic user, very, very powerful, potentially, if they can get there. Whenever they are side by side with another first level character who is a multi-class magic user, then they're going to level up faster than them, and they're going to surpass them eventually. But that other one is going to make up for it in versatility and their non-human features that they have, that kind of thing. So other things about being a first level magic user, and the reason I brought all that up was just to kind of like get you in the perspective of what the world is like with magic users, so you can really kind of own in on what does it mean to be a low level magic user. You got to understand the broad to understand the specific, I feel like. Okay, so the magic user, it's heavily inspired by Tales of the Dying Earth. It's painfully obvious if you read Tales of the Dying Earth, but there are some notable differences. So we do have this Vancian magic system, which is gamified, with leveled spells, and that's not really the leveled spells is not really a thing in Tales of the Dying Earth. But they do have spells that are more, that require more oomph. Basically, you have Kugel remarking about how he can only kind of manage a couple little trifling spells, and there were others that were able to handle all these great powerful ones. So there is an abstraction there that translates nicely. However, whenever you look at the magicians of Tales of the Dying Earth, they are often kind of warriors as well. Turgeon wields a sword. Almost all of them wield swords of some kind. They don't walk around with daggers and darts and like a staff. That's not really what they do necessarily. They're going to stab something with whatever best implement of stabbing they can. And so that is one of the big differences there. So for people that want to really push the whole concept of the the sword wielding magician, there's support for it in the Appendix N literature. There is, but you got to think about what exactly does that do? What does that do? So the magic user only gets to be proficient in one type of weapon to start with. Whew, one type, and using something that they're not proficient in is a -5 on your attack roll. So that's really incredibly rough. So what does this say about the level 1 character? It means that they're not good at using weapons, and they have basically no clue. That's just not the kind of life that this person has had. So whenever I see that and I look at how training works and all this kind of stuff, I start thinking about, well, wouldn't that suggest that this person, along with the years, I think I have something about how old they are. Okay, here we go. So 26 to 40 if human, 155 to 180 if elven, 32 to 46 if half elven. So they're mostly kind of mature-ish human, human-wise. Well, actually, overall, kind of like mature overall. What that tells me is that they very likely have had kind of a cloistered life, doing a lot of studying, just a ton of studying. They have done an apprenticeship for a particular patron wizard, and they, they just kind of know roughly how to defend themselves with something not very profound, definitely not a weapon of war. So that's why we're stuck with the dagger and the staff. The dart is kind of a question mark. I'm not really sure why the dart is what it is. Whenever we think of darts, a lot of times people think of, like playing darts, and I don't, I don't think that that's what we're talking about here. You got dart guns, perhaps, but you don't really have anything about blow darts. There's no real mention of anything like that. So a lot of people refer to the big Roman darts, the war darts that you throw, and they are actually deadly. You can kill people with those things, for sure. Um, the weight doesn't really seem to stack up to that, though. Not from what I gather. So exactly the dart is, what it would look like to have trained in dart use. I'm not really sure exactly. But your options are incredibly limited, and really, if you want to have any level of variety in how you tackle things, you probably need to choose dagger, because then you can throw it or you can stab with it if you have to. When it comes to darts, if they're up in your face, then you're gonna have to like tackle them or whatever. So that's the general thing with the weaponry, the weapon choice. They're going to be practically useless, aside from their spell. And if they use darts, then they're actually not too terribly bad. It's like 1d2 damage, I think, and up to 3 times per round. Darts run out quickly, because we have some people that are playing magic users in my game. Darts run out quickly. But you're just not going to be doing a heck of a lot. So if you're not going to be this great combatant, especially because you can't use any kind of armor at all, you are a sitting duck. You need to stay as far away from the front line as possible, and probably as far away from the back line as possible. You just need to stay in the midst of a bunch of bodies, and then just hope that if your dungeon master is using the random determination of who receives a missile attack, as the rules imply, that they don't happen to roll you, because if they do, then there's a pretty good chance that you're getting hit. And you're going to die. D4 hit points doesn't go very far. So if that's not your role, then what is your role? Well, the role of the magic user is, there's a few things. So first off, you are the glass cannon in a way, possibly. The way that they use the character creation rules in AD&D is really nice. The way that you determine what your starting spells are. So for those who don't know, you get 4 spells to start with. Just no matter what, 4 spells. You get 4 spells. So you get 1 offensive spell, and there's a list that you can randomly roll on. And there's a certain one, if you roll this, you get to choose. Player gets to choose. There, you choose you get a defensive spell. Determine randomly, you get a defensive spell. You get a support spell or utility. I can't remember what it's called. And you get read magic. And even with all of that, you still have limited number of castings per day. That can only really goes up by increasing in level or by having a higher intelligence. And even that, those bonus spells, they definitely help, especially earlier on. But in the end, it doesn't end up being like too profound. Well, there's some other things that end up being the big deal. But the point of the matter is that you're going to end up with things that are useful in these situations, and you can decide based on what day of the week it is in your game. What am I going with today? Am I going to go offensive? Am I going defensive? Am I going support? Or am I just preparing read magic and hoping that I find a scroll, because then, I can go ahead and identify the scroll and, that kind of thing. And that's pretty much you. But there are definitely some spells that are more useful than others. Burning Hands is rough because you have to get up in their business in order to, use the Burning Hands. And that is not a desirable outcome. Burning Hands is a lot more useful at higher levels. Even then, it's rough. Shocking Grasp, very similar in that whole thing. Sleep. Sleep is the one that you want, guys. Sleep is love. Sleep is life. If you can get sleep, then that is the one. Um, so outside of your one or possibly two or possibly three castings in that first level that you get per day, outside of that, you're the smart guy. So what does being the smart guy mean? It means that you're more likely to be able to learn languages. Now, starting languages are limited. Whenever you get those extra languages, they are languages you can learn, and you will look in the Dungeon Master's Guide and find that it says that you need to go out and learn these languages. You need to take time to do that. Again, great calls for downtime, for getting to know the world around you. That way you can capture a kobold, keep them prisoner, and force them to teach you the language, and threaten to kill them if it turns out that they try to yark you. um, so that is a huge purpose of the magic user. There is another one, that an unwritten one. Well, actually, I guess theoretically you could say that one was kind of unwritten in a way. And that is the patron. Again, they train under somebody. They learn these spells from somewhere. They don't come from a vacuum. It's not because, oh, I'm just incredibly smart. It's because they trained under somebody. It explicitly states that as a magic user, you were an apprentice for some time. That's how you learn these spells. And so because of that, there is a relationship that is implied, that we can say, all right, well, who trained me, DM? And then they can say, okay, well, it's going to be, where are you from? Okay, it's going to be this person. If it's somebody nearby, guess what? They know who you are, hopefully, unless they have Chengnesia. They know who you are, and you can go back to them, and you can say, hey, I want some training, for more stuff here. What can I do to earn that right? How much is it going to cost me? What kind of stuff do you need done around here? What do you know about? What would be something good for my party to get up to? Hey, we have this problem and we don't know who to turn to. Are you a specialist? Are you a sage of this kind? Or do you know one that we can reach out to? Do you have any high level fighter friends that we can go to, that maybe they can hook us up with some mercenaries or something like that? This is one of those things that is not talked about very often, but it's one of the things that to me kind of creates this atmosphere that I'm wanting to go with AD&D, which is that these high level characters are out there. And the reason that they're not dealing with this low level stuff is because there's so much out there. There's so much high level stuff to deal with, that it's intense. It is absolutely intense. They are busy. They are busy, guys. They don't have time for the piddly nonsense. And you do. And that piddly nonsense is what gets you potentially to their status someday. So, what I was long-windedly trying to say is your magic user can be a translator, because they are the high intelligence people other than your illusionist. So yeah, that is their thing. So they're a translator. They are a glass cannon. Somebody who's going to maybe hold torches, once they've used their spell, or even otherwise, they're probably going to be holding torches. They may throw a dagger or two, but they're going to be trying to stay out of the crap if they can possibly help it. They're good torchbearers. They just are. Or just carrying some light equipment, because a lot of times they're going to be not very strong, but they're also not going to be very encumbered. They don't have a lot of gear to carry for battle purposes. So because of that, they're great for carrying stuff. They could throw oil flasks, I believe. I want to say that they can. But I think everybody can. I think everybody can throw oil flasks. Yeah. We'll say yes. I don't want to hold this up too much. All right. So that is their role in an adventuring party in the low levels, to be the arcane, I know some things kind of thing, but not major things. You can't really use it in the same loosey-goosey way that you might with BX, or especially with 5e, where you're just like, oh, just make a check, because of this beautiful thing that we have called the Dungeon Master's Guide, that says, guys, there are these people out there that know, they spend their lives trying to learn everything. They are sages and they don't know everything. And here are their percentage chances of knowing something that's within their field, something that's outside of their field, and then, just kind of like general knowledge that they might have. And there's a decent chance that they don't know stuff. And if they don't know stuff, and they've been doing this for not generations, decades and decades and decades, then your 26 to 40-year-old magic user probably doesn't know more than them in a lot of ways. I would actually recommend that you have your player character magic users roll up a major field of study in a minor one. Don't try and overshadow the sages, I would say, but just assume that they're going to learn some of these things. And the reason that I say that is because of how spell research happens. So if you look in the DMG, it's page 116. There is a very, very nice little section on spell research. And it says that in the creation of magic, they have to have all of these books. And these books can be on history, geography, astrology, alchemy, all kinds of subjects. And that those are going to help them understand how to make spells happen. Now, those of you that are familiar with Tales of the Dying Earth will know that magic is compared to mathematics. It is in being mathematics, that means you have it's a system. Like it's something that if you understand how it works, it is predictable. It has it's always going to be that way. That's how math, the answers don't change. And because of that, if we take that, then we can understand that we can use that system to understand kind of how magic is. Magic is not this wild, unpredictable thing. So it doesn't fit the conception that we use in Dungeon Crawl Classics, for instance. But rather it is very precise, and is a reflection of the world around. And that's why you get all this other information that you use in order to figure out your spells. So think of it as like this just intense studying that you're doing to try and understand more about how the world works. And then you're using that and translating it into a mathematical formula. And that ends up being the magical language, which it is distinct. It's not just like I'm writing A equals M squared or whatever. It actually is something you cannot discern without the aid of read magic. But it still explains particular laws about the world. And I think that's really, really interesting. I love it. I love it. So what that also tells you is that the spells that are commonly known, your sleeps, your fireballs, all that kind of stuff, those are going to be the equations that people share broadly. A lot of people, everybody knows these. Those are the common ones. But then you're going to get the very particular ones. And that's whenever spell research enters. And you get this passage in there about how the dungeon master should be secretive with the player who creates a new spell about the knowledge of that spell. So I've actually had that happen before. In my BX game, we used spell research, and we had a player, Smoking Joe, who is an avid AD&D fan. He loves a lot of the stuff in there. And that's one of the things that he took about was, I want to be a magic user, but I really want to capitalize on all these things that AD&D talks about. So he crafted a spell, and as I want to say he was chaotic, but if not chaotic, yeah, he basically was chaotic. He created a spell that required him to turn a pound of flesh into temporary health points. Actually, temporarily increases maximum HP. It's something that he would be able to apply to himself, and it's something that the rest of the party could not really know about, because if they knew about it, they would have serious problems with him doing it, because they were, it's a very law versus chaos world. And we had a lot of clerics that were basically paladins with the absence of actual paladins being represented. So it would not have been very well appreciated. And what he told me is, hey, I don't want the information about this thing to go out. So what did we do? He would send me a message and say, I'm handling this, I'm doing this. And that's how we did things. And I feel like you should probably do the same thing here, because player characters are going to create their own spells, and they are the proprietary technology owners. They are the technology hoarders in a way. They get to decide how that technology spreads. They get to decide, am I going to sell it off to people? Am I going to make it the next big thing and make a huge profit in the process? Or am I going to hoard this knowledge because this is incredibly useful magic and I need every advantage over the competitors that I can get. And I can't trust other magic users to not lose their spell books and it get into the wrong hands. That's the kind of stuff that you can get into. It is so cool. So then your magic users become these technology I don't know why I can't think of the word, but they're pushing all these boundaries. And you see how that plays out in the real world. Whenever you have people that have these technological innovations that they're able to pull out, then it naturally becomes something that people fight over, and espionage and all this kind of stuff happens. It's fascinating. It's just really, really cool. I highly recommend that people use that whenever they are using their magic users. But the important thing, all of this said, is that your magic user, your level 1 magic user, should be looking to be that person someday. Spell research should be the goal that you strive toward for most of your career. It's not just something that you do in order to reproduce a spell that you weren't able to learn because you failed the check. No, you should try and find things that are incredibly unique that you can pull off. I have a friend named Black Dragon Gaming. He has a really, really awesome spell that he demonstrates this use in that the world is going to have spells created as responses to other spells. So we have Shield, for instance, as a response to Magic Missile. Magic Missile is annoying to be on the receiving end of, so I'm going to create a spell where I cannot get hurt by Magic Missile. Well, he used the same principle for silence. He said, silence sucks. It sucks to get silence cast on you. So what if I created a spell that worked like Shield, but for silence? He did that. It is awesome. That is what the world should be like. It should be full of those kinds of spells. And those kinds of spells might be common. They might be all over the place at some point, or they might be just known by a few. And people don't really understand, how did he do that? How did he do that? It's my secret, guys. I'm the one who is the keeper of that technology. I'm the gatekeeper. You haven't earned the pass yet. Okay. Ritualistic, requiring flawless execution. Again, that's from the mathematical kind of perception. All has to be done perfectly. This means that your magic user does not need to be missing any limbs. They need every bit of arms and fingers and stuff that they can manage, because who knows what's going to be important to each spell. Who knows? There's some people that I've seen that have, tried to say, well, we can make some exceptions. Yeah, you get a finger cut off, but it's fine. Like your body works around it and whatever. That's fine. You can, there's, that's in the margins where we can all come up with our own stuff. Let's see. Magic writing is legible, but incomprehensible without read magic, allowing the casting of unknown spells from scrolls. So we do know that much. What else? So we have the age thing. What is apprenticeship like? So apprenticeship, if we look at, again, a lot of this is based off of Tales of the Dying Earth, at least the Vancian magic model is. So if we take that, then we can say, well, what does an apprenticeship look like there? And what it looks like there is nothing like Hogwarts. Don't look at it as something like Hogwarts if you want. If you want to do that thing, go for it. There's nothing stopping you. In fact, I could actually see that something like that could exist in the world of Greyhawk. I could see a very generous benefactor for the principles of law and good, facilitating the creation of a magical school of that nature and teaching the appropriate apprentices, assuming that they pass their alignment checks and everything, teaching them what they need to in order to become more powerful forces in order to win the war against chaos and evil. I could totally see that as a possibility. However, if we're following the Vancian model, it's not quite like that. The example that I provide in the article is talking about Pandaloom and Turgeon, where Turgeon does a favor for Pandaloom. Pandaloom gives him some knowledge that he wants. It's transactional. It's always transactional. And that's, to me, that's how I look at it. It should always be transactional. I think that is interesting. It creates a, it's a self self-perpetuating generator of adventures whenever you have that kind of transactional relationship, because either you need to adventure to get the gold in order to pay them to get them to teach you stuff, or you need to do them favors. So, and what those favors are not going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy kinds of things, because magic is, it's important. Remember, it's rare technology. Because of that, they're probably going to be sending people to do things that they don't want to have to do themselves. And those could be dangerous things. If you think about it, getting to be a high level magic user someday. So these high level name level wizards, they have worked themselves to the point where they can make money and live comfortably on their own. They can train people and get paid. They can create new stuff and get paid. They are not really in need of this adventuring business in the same capacity, unless they are trying to get to the next levels so that they can reach the next peak of their existence, more or less. So because of that, they're not going to really put themselves in jeopardy that much. They're going to try not to. They're going to try and use their money, their influence, and all those kinds of things to limit the kind of personal risks that they take themselves. And you, as a low-level magic user, are going to be a pawn that they can use to get what they want, to get stuff done that they can't get done by normal means, but that kind of thing. So, the Pandaloom and Turgeon example, he wants him to go steal something from Prince Candive, who is a dangerous magic user. And in return, he teaches them how to create artificial humans. It's very, very, very cool. I love this particular trope, and I think that is how I would definitely model the whole apprenticeship thing. All right. What else? The future that your magic user can look forward to is that future of being an enigmatic figure in the world who has all of this influence, because you're this technology expert. You can do all this cool stuff. You can make or break all kinds of things. You can destroy things. You have power that other people don't have. And that makes you incredibly fearsome. You have to wait till level 12 to construct a stronghold. So strongholds are going to, this was something that was kind of weird, because if you look at the random stronghold encounters, you can actually encounter magic users that are level 11 that can have their own strongholds. I don't know if this was a math problem, ironically, or what. And they will not attract the body of followers that a fighter or cleric will. So instead, the magic user is going to be depending on their own devices when it comes to recruiting henchmen and getting them to go along with things and all that kind of stuff. Level 12 is when you can create magic items and all that. Then I have this whole thing about, fun with the magic tables. And honestly, that's just me kind of goofing around. But that is, for the most part, I know this is very long-winded, but that is the whole thing about what does it mean to be a first-level magic user? Where do you take it from there? Because it's all about just trying to get into the headspace of being that low-level magic user. What can I look forward to? What has my experience been like up until now? And how do I view the world? And what is magic like? So hopefully I've answered all those questions in a way that you appreciate. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know if you appreciated this. If you let me know what you didn't, if you didn't appreciate it, and link in the description for if you just want to read the article. Peace out.